What's going on, everyone? This is Russell here. I'm going to break down the November 13th NBA slate. Let's get right into it. Okay, let's start at point guard. And again, this is for Draftkings. Ja's price is really high up there. Oh, wait, actually, before we jump into it, talk about injuries. Well, we got, let's see, Beal is ruled out due to personal issues. Horford's still questionable. Brandon Ingram is playing. Richardson is questionable. And Fred VanVleet is also questionable. And that's it for now. All right, let's hop into point guard. So here we have Ja at 10,200. That's really expensive for him. There's a lot of things working against Ja today. The one thing that you will get if you play him is super low ownership. But I'm not a huge fan of him. One, his price is getting up there. Two, Dylan Brooks is coming back into form. You know, he played really well last night off the bench. He might start, take away some usage from him. Three, it's a back-to-back. So, I don't know. And also, a lot of the games they've played this year haven't been close. So, he's going to be low owned. I think he might actually be lower than 5 to 8, to be honest, with the other value plays we get with Beal being out. Don't love him, but again, I think he'll be lower than 5 to 8 if you want to take a chance on him. Wizards lineup has been confirmed. Let's see who's starting. Where are they? I gotta refresh the page. One sec. All right, they're starting Dinwiddie, Pope, Kuzma, Dinwiddie, Holiday, the shooting guard, Kuzma, Pope, Gafford. Okay, that's what I expected. All right, we'll get to them. Back to point guard. Fred VanVleet, questionable. I like him more than Ja, but again, there's so much value at point guard that I think you're going to be able to get what he can produce at a much cheaper cost, and I don't think there's a significant change in upside, if any, especially if he's not 100%. So I'm kind of staying away from the really high-priced guards today. With LeVert playing, Brogdon, still can put up a great performance, but not as high on him as I usually would be. So, top of the top tier, at least price-wise, of the point guards today, I'm kind of shying away from. Cole Anthony is kind of interesting. He'll definitely be low-owned. He's inconsistent, but he's going against the Wizards without Beal, and that could be a wild game. So he's not too much more expensive than the chalky guards like D'Lo and Dinwiddie, but just enough so that you're going to get him at an ownership discount. And we've seen his ceiling flash a couple times. If we take a look back, yeah, he's cracked 60 twice. I know one was overtime, but he's definitely worth putting in a few lineups if you're making a bunch, or since there's going to be a ton of value in the Washington-Orlando game, include him in a game stack. If that game goes to overtime, it's great for you. Tyrese Maxey is a really tough one to analyze because he was getting all these minutes early in the season, wasn't doing much with them, but now he's finally come on really strong. Although Tobias is back, it still didn't prevent him from cracking 50 fantasy points the other night. I mean, he is a workhorse, playing almost 40 minutes every night. So I'm really curious what his ownership's going to be tonight. It says 2 to 4. I don't think it'll be that low. But with, the value with D'Lo being slightly cheaper and Dinwiddie being slightly cheaper, plus Schroeder with Jaylen Brown still out, I think it'll be maybe around like 5%. And while his upside isn't necessarily higher than any of these guys in their current situation, D'Lo, playing healthy minutes, Garland with Sexton out, Reggie rediscovering his form, Dinwiddie with, Beal out, Schroeder with Jaylen Brown out. So I think their ceilings are all comparable, and it's not like Maxey has a higher ceiling necessarily, but I wouldn't be surprised if you know, if he scores as top two, maybe even the top out of all of them. Not my favorite tournament play, but definitely interesting. I think it'll be one of those things where like maybe he'll slightly outperform, you know, maybe D'Lo or Dinwiddie, but there's going to be so many people rostering the other lineups, and so many people rostering these other players in their lineups that the optimal may technically include Maxey, but I don't think that's going to win first. Like I think he's safe, but I'd rather take a chance on Dinwiddie, D'Lo, even Schroeder to save some salary, maybe squeeze in a few other plays. But he's interesting. I wouldn't fade him. Garland is never a sexy play, but Sexton's out. He's a little expensive. Oh, we got some news. Oh, Fred VanVleet is ruled out. Okay, that's big news. All right, who's getting the start? Will it be Dragic or probably Dragic? But I don't know. Ooh, this is tough because Dragic will probably draw the start, but I don't know how many minutes he's going to play. He might play like 20 to 25, and then same thing with Flynn. So they're both not super attractive at that minute range, even though they're going to be cheap. Let's see if they have the starting lineup. Not yet. All right, we'll come back to Toronto guards when there's a starting lineup announced. I'll be checking on the side. All right, back to point guard. Okay, so obviously Spencer Dinwiddie is going to be really popular, but I really like him, and not just because he's going to get increased usage. I mean, that's a big part of it. But if we look here, we can actually see the difference in usage, and it's pretty significant. So when Beal, and obviously these guys who've been injured all year, when Beal's off the court, Spencer Dinwiddie gets a 7.1% increase in usage, and sort of Kuzma and Harrell also get a nice bump. So these three guys are going to be part of my core tonight. I'm not going to put them in every lineup, but I'm going to make a few lineups with all three stacked. And I'll probably include some Orlando players as well. I think people are going to sleep on Kuzma today. I could be wrong, but I think he'll be under 10% owned. Not sure about Harrell, but not many people are going to be rostering all three unless they're doing an entire game stack. So you can definitely roster all three and then, make a normal rest of the lineup, not necessarily targeting other Orlando players in that lineup. So I like these three as my core today a lot. News, virtual play, not that important. Schroeder had a big game last night. He's very inconsistent because he's super dependent on whether his shot's falling. Dropped 38 last night. Probably won't do that again, but he's cheap going against the Cavs. Smart, I probably like more. He's cheaper. He's playing big minutes. He's had a rough start to the year, but he's kind of showing up lately with 34.25 and 42.5 fantasy points the last two outings. So if you're choosing between either Schroeder or Smart, I like Smart much better. Or you could take both. They're both good deals, potentially. Obviously, we have Aaron Holiday at min price, who will be pretty popular, projected for around 26 minutes. So you can't fade him because if he, goes for over 30 fantasy points, he's probably going to be in the optimal. But I might be lighter than the field on him. Because if you look at his production based on his per minute production, he's gotten 25 minutes, put up 17 fantasy points. He's got 24 minutes. And I know that was probably with also sharing time with Beal on the court, maybe. if Dinwiddie was out, but not a must play. Don't fade him though. Okay, that about does it for point guard. Let's see if there's any Toronto news. Not yet. All right, let's see if there's any shooting guards who are not point guard eligible that we can talk about. Anthony Edwards had a 48-point game the other night. I think he's fine, but I don't know. I think there's better value, and chances of him, dropping 48 again to get the ceiling you need at that price point the chances aren't very high. D'Lo, I think he's going to be chalky, but he's simply too cheap based on his current production and minutes. Not a must play, but I think he's going to be solid. Karis LeVert, he'll probably still be popular. 13-16 sounds about right because he's getting starters minutes again. Hasn't quite found his stride yet, but on a per minute basis when he's on, he can have like a triple double easy. So I like him a lot at 6,900, and I think most people will just lock him into the small forward spot because there's going to be a lot of value at the guard spots. So that's why I think Kuzma could go a little under-owned, even though Kuzma is also power forward eligible. But most people will just take LeVert and not even think about Kuzma. That's my thoughts, at least. All right. Anyone else? Shorter, we talked about Nickeil Alexander-Walker had a huge night the other day, but with Ingram coming back, he's not really interesting to me. Gary Trent, obviously with Van Vliet out, is going to be very popular, and rightly so. I'll see a ton of usage. Let's see how much. I didn't check that. So if we go to the Raptors and Fred Van Vliet. Anyone else I have to... Siakam's back. I think that's it. Yeah, so it's not a huge sample size. Precious Achiuwa, 29.7% increase in usage. But a lot of that would have gone to Siakam, because Siakam is just getting back into the lineup. How many minutes do they have Siakam projected for? He could be interesting if he sees 30. Let's see. Siakam projected for 28.7 minutes. Okay. We'll get to him. Back to shooting guard. So yeah, Gary Trent, going to be very popular, and he's obviously a solid play. You can definitely go light on him, though, because he's very reliant on his scoring, and we've seen him get plenty of minutes in the past and not deliver. Playing like 36 minutes, 35 minutes. We'll see. Not my favorite play. I'd rather go lighter on him than the field will be. I think Osman's interesting. Projected for around 27 minutes against Boston. Sexton is still out. And also, let me check one other thing. I know Richardson's still questionable. Because if the Celtics are in a back-to-back, so if Richardson sits, it's going to be like Langford and Naismith, who, could be some, dart throws you could take a chance at. But, Osman will be going against some reserve players and could light it up. Kennard has been hit or miss, but can produce on a permanent basis. Pope is a guy you never really want to play, but he always has the potential to just hit a ton of threes and get a ton of defensive stats. So if you're making a bunch of lineups, He's not the sexiest play. Maybe he was once when during that stretch he was on the Pistons and he was just like, he's had like a stretch of like a couple weeks where he was just like going off. But he can still put up big numbers, just not that often. We're throwing in a few. That's really all the small forwards that are interesting to me. Shooting guards. Don't like Melton with Brooks back. Man's been struggling. Cade Cunningham could be a low-owned dart throw. All right, let's go on to small forward. Paul George has not been hitting his price point. Against Minnesota, anything is possible. Their defense is not the best, for sure. He'll be low-owned because he just hasn't been meeting that, 5 to 8% owned. I probably won't be playing him because literally every time I play him, he just never hits value. Obviously, I'm kidding, and they're independent events, but I'm still not going to play him today. Ingram projected for 33 minutes. I think he might play a little less. If he was playing his normal minutes, he'd be more interesting. Tatum, I think, is a strong tournament play. No special insights for him, really, but I'd rather go Tatum over George if you're trying to pick, or Ingram if you're trying to pick one of these guys. Scottie Barnes is probably a little overpriced with Siakam coming back into the lineup. However, with Van Vliet ruled out, he could see more usage on offense. So he'll probably go overlooked because most people will make the connection. Oh, Siakam's back. His price is a little high. Talked about Kuzma, talked about LeVert. Josh Hart isn't as interesting with Ingram back. I think Franz Wagner is interesting against the Wizards. A lot of people you could throw in a game stack in that game, and he's definitely one of them. You can get a ton of steals, and if his shot's falling, definitely pay off that price point. Not sure why Kyle Anderson is rated highly in my model with Brooks coming back. I don't like him. I think that's pretty much it. If Richardson's out, you could take a chance on Langford or Naismith. I think that does it for interesting small forwards. Let's go to power forward. Sabonis will definitely be low owned. He hasn't been, clearing 50 fantasy points as frequently as he was. A lot of that has to do with LeVert coming back. A lot of it has to do is that he hasn't had to score as much as he did last season. So he's someone to, if you have extra salary, he has a big ceiling. It's actually interesting that he's projected for a higher ceiling than Tatum today. So I like him as a tournament play. Tobias's price is up there, but the usage will be there. So I think that's a fair price. Nothing to take advantage of. Horford's questionable. I think that's big news for Robert Williams if he's out. Siakam you could take a chance on. Hope he gets 30 minutes and is a super efficient performance. A risk worth taking if you're making a bunch of lineups. Kuzma, probably my favorite play at small forward / power forward. There's really not too many people that are standing out. Wendell Carter had a great game the other day. Against the Jazz, not so much against the Nets. He got poked in the eye or something. Against the Wizards, they could be a little bit undersized as usual with, Harold and Montrezl Harrell and Kuzma playing the power forward spot. So, not my favorite play, but if you're running a game stack, he's someone you should put in. All right, let's go to center, which is my favorite position of the day. All right, so we have Towns. Hasn't had a monster game where he hits 70, maybe once this year, that's it. I think his price is fair, but I don't love him. He's played the Clippers twice and hasn't really done anything special. 45, yeah, he hasn't even hit value in either of those games. So I'm kind of shying away from him. I think Valanciunas is really interesting with Ingram back because, that could honestly not really have an impact on him because, Ingram draws a lot of attention and, Val's getting a ton of offensive rebounds anyway. So he's going to go overlooked, I think, and has a huge ceiling. So he's one of my favorite plays. Yep. Let's see. Obviously, Drummond could have a monster day against the Pacers, who aren't the best rebounding team. So you know what you're getting with Drummond. I think Jarrett Allen will go overlooked. If Horford's out and Robert Williams is getting the majority of the minutes, they're a little undersized. He can get a ton of rebounds. Hasn't had that crazy production he did in a stretch of 3 games earlier. Kind of trying to down lately, but I think this is a great bounce back spot, and I think he'll go overlooked with all the other centers on the slate. Raptors lineup was just confirmed. Let's take a look. Okay. It seems Fantasy Labs doesn't have Flynn on here or Dragic. Let's refresh that again. Let's check this instead. It says Dragic is starting. He can be good on a per minute basis. Maybe I like him a little bit more than Aaron Holiday if you had to place either one in that point guard spot or guard spot. I think he has a higher ceiling if he sees decent minutes. So I like him more than Aaron Holiday, I'll say that. But my fear is he gets maybe 20 minutes and so does Flynn, and then neither of them are that interesting. Okay. Back to center. Okay. I like Mobley, but I like Jarrett Allen a lot better, even though he's more expensive. I don't know what to make of Miles Turner versus Drummond. If he's hitting his threes, then he could be a great low-owned play, but chances are, more often than not, he's not going to, have that crazy production, like here when he drops 25 points and 40 points. Doesn't happen too frequently. So, came against the Wizards and the Knicks. Not too much to conclude from that. Montrezl Harrell, I like. Obviously, I showed you his increase in usage with Beal off the floor. A lot of that has to do with Beal simply just being off the floor when he's on the floor because he comes off the bench. But he could see extra touches, extra usage. Regardless. And Gafford just doesn't play big minutes. Sometimes they just give a lot more minutes to Harrell, depending on the game. Jaren Jackson is popping in my model. I don't know why, but we know he has upside. He just hasn't shown it that much this season. A couple games over 40 fantasy points, and he's not expensive, so don't fade him. But more interested in a Robert Williams tonight, especially if Horford's out, or Zubac, who's actually played really well against Towns, and he's only 5K. His minutes have been trending back up. His production has been trending back up. 29 minutes, 30 minutes, where in the past he was only getting 17, 19, low 20s, mid 20s. He's a sneaky play I like a lot. Isaiah Stewart could be a good deal. He just hasn't produced like he did the other year. I think that's about it. Let's see, anything else I want to touch on? Let me just see if they have the official lineup here. Not yet. All right, let's make a lineup. We'll do my core. All right, so we got Dinwiddie. I'm not going to play Aaron Holiday in this one. Actually, I want Kuzma at power forward. And Harrell. Okay. I like LeVert. He's confirmed playing. I think it's too cheap. Okay, this is where things get interesting. We don't know if Horford's out yet. If he is ruled out, I'll probably play Robert Williams in this. But for this specific one, I guess, since he's not ruled out yet, let's go with either Valanciunas, Jared Allen, or Zubac. Now, I think Allen's the best deal of the three. Maybe not in terms of ownership, but his ceiling is somewhere around 60, whereas Zubac is probably in the 40s. So there is value on the slate with like Holiday, Dragic. So you could get cute by going cheap at center, which is something I'll do in a couple other lineups, but let's go with Jared Allen in this one. Let's go with Marcus Smart, who I talked about that I like at that price, trending up. And let's just optimize the rest, see what happens. If I like it, I'll keep it. If not, so D'Lo and Osman. Sounds great. Here we go. Dinwiddie. Well, actually, I'm going to put Smart there because you always want to put the games play at 7, 8, 9, etc., and they lock game by game. So you always want to put people that are playing earlier in the specific spots so you have more leeway in the guard, forward, and utility spot. If news breaks later and you have to make adjustments. So this lineup looks legit. Let's see how it does. Good luck, everyone, and hope you enjoyed. I will see you next time. Maybe later today. Might make a NFL slate, breaking it down tomorrow after all the madness of last week. All right, good luck.